This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by EV Duty.
It's safe to say here at Test Drive, we love doing the electric car coverage. Consumer interest here in Quebec is high for these vehicles, and because there's always something new going on, it's pretty fresh whenever we feature something even from a new manufacturer. Our spotlight is on this 2019 Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid with the Touring trim. It has a 1.5-liter Atkinson cycle engine, a 17 kilowatt-hour battery, and an eCVT. Now this is a 76 kilometer range full electric vehicle with 547 total kilometers when you add in the gas motor. It's a very small gas tank, so it doesn't have quite the same range of some of the other plug-in hybrid electric cars we've featured. MSRP for this trim is $44,100 Canadian, but we're adding on $300 for this platinum white paint. We're going to go over absolutely everything you need to know if you're in the market for a sub $45,000 round 80 kilometer full EV range out of a plug-in hybrid electric car. Last year we featured the 2018 Honda Accord 1.5-liter Touring. That was the only new Honda we featured on Test Drive up until today. So it's been a little while since we've had their cars. I'm really excited because I do personally love doing the electric cars, the hybrid electrics, the plug-ins. I'm really excited about this stuff, and especially the Clarity. It's a vehicle that I've had on my list for a long time. Ever since the original FCX Clarity came out, it was a vehicle I always wanted to try out. Now this will be a very comprehensive episode of Test Drive Spotlight. We're going to be going over everything you need to know about this car specifically, but we're also going to talk about the two other sedans that are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles that we've tested over the last year, because I think that a lot of people who are looking for these cars don't care whether it's a Honda, a Kia, a Hyundai, a GM. They just care about the range. That's the number one most important thing, plus price. Range number one, price number two, and then the rest of the features kind of trickle down much lower. People only care about how far they can go full electric and how much it's going to cost them. So we're going to be going over some of that information. Right now I want to talk about the features on this vehicle. You have full LED headlights, LED front turn signals, LED taillights, and the LED daytime running lights that you see here now. Now the rear turn signals, they're not LED, but just something to note. There are only two trims sold here in Canada. Both have the collision mitigation system: forward collision warning, lane departure warning, road departure mitigation, lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control, and blind spot display. It's not blind spot monitoring. Honda calls it blind spot monitor. So there isn't an actual blind spot monitoring system on this vehicle. The Clarity has a unique front end compared to other vehicles in Honda's lineup. The grille area is pretty similar, I'd say, to the 10th generation Accord, but the daytime running lights that are shaped like L's are pretty cool. The front end look is unique to it. The fact that it has an aerodynamic rear wheel hub area is kind of cool, as well as the rims. Honda says that the plastic caps that go on top of the 18-inch alloy rims are designed to improve aerodynamics and brake cooling. So there's a lot of things that make this car more aerodynamic. If you take a look at the back of the vehicle, personally for me it looks a lot like the Cross Tour that doesn't exist anymore, which is actually a pretty cool car. As far as I'm concerned, it's one that I would have bought. I really do like it. The back of this has a bit of that element design to it. The back area is much higher than you would find on the Accord as well, and that's to accommodate the batteries while still giving this vehicle pretty good cargo volume in the trunk. So the actual trunk itself is lifted higher. There's a piece of glass that runs actually behind the headrests for the rear passengers, which then exits out the back. So I mean, there might be a way for Honda to have eliminated the cross section that runs through the glass. I couldn't tell you for sure, but it is a very interesting note, because if they did keep the same proportions from something like the Accord, you would have had much less visibility and much less actual storage capacity in the trunk. But I think it's a good look. There's no parking sensors on this vehicle. There's no power folding mirrors. There's no sunroof. You only have about 6 choices for paint colors as well. But like I said, most people who are looking at a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle don't necessarily care about that. They want the most range. With its 17 kilowatt hour battery, Honda says you can do up to 76 kilometers full electric. We did do our 100 kilometer test loop before filming what we're doing right now, and I did do 75.6 kilometers full electric sequentially before running out. Now that will change so much. We hear that a lot in the comments. It really depends on how you drive, where you're driving, and the type of driving you're doing. This vehicle is actually less efficient on the highway because you can't use the regenerative braking because you're going usually at constant speed and always accelerating or maintaining speed. You're always using battery power. Very little is actually going back into the battery through brake force regeneration. So that's why these vehicles are better off if you're using them in the city. However, you're still going to see a huge improvement with your gas consumption as well as overall costs for maintaining the vehicle, even if you are doing more highway driving. The sweet spot really is underneath that 76-kilometer range. So if you're going somewhere within that distance and you can plug it in for 2.5 hours, then you're good to go. You won't be using any gas because it only has a 26.5-liter gas tank. Really small fuel tank, especially compared to the Accord, which has a 56-liter tank. And that's especially true when we look at the Volt and the Optima PHEV that we did. The Volt had a slightly larger gas tank, but because it's a smaller vehicle, you could go further. Something like the Optima PHEV was really a regular Kia Optima with a full-size gas tank that just happened to have a plug-in hybrid motor attached to it. So you could get almost 1,000-kilometer range out of the Optima, whereas this just does a little over 500. So let's take a look at those numbers. I don't want to inundate you with too much information, but I'll go over the important stuff. The Honda Clarity has a 17 kilowatt hour battery, the Volt has an 18.4 kilowatt hour battery, and the Optima PHEV has a 9.8 kilowatt hour battery. The Clarity has a 76 kilometer EV range, the Volt has an 85 kilometer EV range, and the Optima only has a 47 kilometer EV range. So you can see, based on how big the battery is, the further you can go. Cargo volume and passenger volume, I think, are important because if you're driving this on a daily basis, you probably want to do stuff with it. Yeah, maybe you're going to be just sitting in it and driving back and forth to work. You have your lunch and that's it. But people will probably still want to use this as a regular car. You're going to want to put stuff in it. So the cargo volume on the Clarity is 439 liters. That's trunk space. Passenger volume on the Clarity is 2,874 liters. When we look at the Volt, it only has a 300-liter cargo capacity, so less, and it has much less passenger volume at 2,557 liters. That was one of our complaints about the car. Overall, it just felt way too small on the inside. We look at the Optima, it has the smallest cargo capacity at 280 liters, 20 liters less than the Volt, but it has a much larger passenger capacity, 2,968 liters. So you get a little bit more space in the Optima, a little bit less in the Clarity, and then quite a bit less in the Volt. Now the other important information is MSRP. As I said, $44,100 for the Clarity. You look at the Volt, that's $47,785. That was as the way that we tested it with the driver confidence package and the Premier trim. And same goes for the Optima. Its MSRP was $45,495. So the Clarity looks really good. If you want the absolute most range, get the Volt. But if you want something that actually looks pretty good and does a lot more in terms of interior space, then the Clarity is the one for you. Now I want to jump inside, talk about the features and everything going on with the interior of this vehicle, and then we will take it on a road test and go over absolutely everything else you need to know if you're in the market for a $44,000 plug-in hybrid electric car. Now there is a lot to go over when it comes to the interior of the Clarity. It is just as important as the exterior and mechanical bits on this car. We have leather seating throughout this vehicle, heated front seats, no heated rear seats, no heated steering wheel. Also, here in Canada, you only have manual adjustment for the front seats. In the States, you have an 8-way power driver with 2 memory options and a 4-way passenger. So we lose out on that here, probably because Honda wants to keep the cost as low as possible to get more people into the vehicles as possible. And like I said, most people who are looking at these don't care about all the bells and whistles. It's most range and MSRP that comes to mind. They have an 8-inch infotainment system with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and a backup camera, an 8-speaker, 180-watt audio system. It's not a premium system, anything like that, but it does get the job done. Honda also says they're using an acoustic windshield with active noise control, and the front windows are also better insulated for noise. I find that the noise, vibration, and harshness on this vehicle is very good, especially at the price point. You have dual zone automatic climate control. It is filtered, and you also have rear vents in the center console for the back passengers. You get HomeLink on the Touring model, and you also have no sunroof and no black headliner, but again, those small features probably aren't going to matter for most buyers. Now I want to take a minute to talk about the tech on this. The 8-inch infotainment system, again, we talked about it when we had the Accord. It's just angled a little higher up, so if you're like me, you sit high up, it's fine, but just something to note. And also I find that it runs a very older version of Honda's infotainment system. The image quality isn't quite as good as we've seen on other vehicles, And I also think it's like a really old version of Android. They have live wallpapers, which I used to test when we started doing perpetual radio almost 10 years ago. It works well enough, most people won't have an issue with it. The screen in the center driver display doesn't have a ton of information. You have to go through a little menu system to be able to see what kind of information there is there. I find that the one major thing it lacks is an actual time to charge screen. Almost every other electric vehicle we've tested, whether it's a full electric or a plug-in hybrid, will tell you on the screen how far along the charging process is with a time to full and a percentage. That mixed with a flashing light usually on the dashboard gives you a pretty good idea of how far you have to go. With this, I can't find that. I think Honda wants people to install their Honda Link smartphone app in order to get that information, but I think it would have been much more convenient if they had it show up as soon as the vehicle's plugged in, like pretty much every other vehicle we've tested to date. Now, where the drive mode controller is might be a little different for people as well. You have wood trim on either side, and it really does take the place of where your normal center console would be to be able to store things, which is why there's a storage compartment underneath to be able to put items. All the buttons are different, whether you're going to drive neutral, a pull back for reverse, and park. I think it works very well, and I actually do like the way it's set up. Above it, you have the Econ, Sport, and Hybrid vehicle buttons, and below is your parking brake and auto hold. It just means if you have a phone, you have to put it underneath the tray or in the very deep cup holders that have little slots to be able to pull down to have smaller cups in them. You also have an armrest with storage compartments underneath there. Seating comfort is really good on this. We mentioned that it is leather seating. I find that it's a good position even without the power adjustment. You have ultra suede that runs along the dashboard and door cards, and then wood trim that again runs along the dashboard, door cards, and the center console area here. I think it looks really nice. There's no black headliner or sunroof with this vehicle, but that doesn't make a big difference. Backseat space also pretty good in terms of space and comfort. And again, you have a weird visibility situation out of the back with a piece of glass that actually sits above where the passenger heads are to be able to see a little bit further out of the back, just kind of like how the Cross Tour looks. The piece of glass runs to the back, and where I'm seated when I'm driving, I can really just see the back of the road. So if somebody's riding my ass, I can see the nose of their vehicle, but that's about it. They've done it this way to give you maximum storage capacity in the trunk. That's why it is much better than it is on something like the Chevrolet Volt, and why it's substantially better than something like the Kia Optima. You just have more cargo volume, and they've optimized pretty much every inch they could in the trunk to get the most out of it, since there is a set of batteries in the back area there. So while most people shouldn't notice a difference, it is something to note that I have found it might be the only annoyance there, on top of the fact that it doesn't actually tell you on the screen how far you are in your charging process. But let's take this car on a road test, talk about everything else you absolutely need to know if you're in the market for the 2019 Honda Clarity. Get the most out of your Honda Clarity with the Level 2 Smart Home Charger from EV-Duty. Cuts charging time down from 12 hours on 120 volts to 2.5 hours on 240 volts. You can get the most electric range and do more electric driving if you can charge your vehicle faster. For more information on the EV-Duty Smart Home Charger, visit elmec.ca. The Clarity really is one of the few cars that I've been super excited about, that I know most car enthusiasts, if not every single car enthusiast out there, doesn't care about. And it was actually really exciting when the FCX Clarity came out. It was something we couldn't buy here in Canada, and you really could only get in California. So when they announced both an EV and a PHEV, I thought it would be pretty fun, and here we are, we're in the 2019, and I gotta say I'm really enjoying my week with it. I've driven about 500 kilometers as of filming this driving segment, so it's about halfway through our week. I'm telling you, it's such a nice car, and we talked about it mostly in the comments, but I tried to allude to it when we were doing the Chevrolet Volt. The Volt is a phenomenal plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. It's just a terrible car. When you look at the Clarity, it's a great plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. The range is about 9 kilometers less than the Volt, but it's also a great car. So you don't end up taking a hit for taking something like this. You have the space. I mean, interior space here is fantastic. I've driven some people around in here too, people who are actually interested in the Clarity. I met up with a local viewer of ours, and he fell in love with it too. It's such a great vehicle for families, not just for one person driving around. And that's one of the only things I'm really disappointed with when it comes to this car is the HVAC system. Not only have I had to adjust it a lot during our drive, that was something that we found with the Chrysler Pacifica, but there is no driver-only mode. And we see that actually on Kia's products, where you can push a button, it'll only use the vents on the driver's side. Because honestly, I see a lot of Clarities on the road, and 9 times out of 10, there's just one person in the car. So if you had an option to be able to turn off the rest of the HVAC systems just to have it on here, you'd save a little bit of fuel and a little bit of electricity. Not a whole lot, but still enough. And especially for people who are buying a car like this, it really comes down to how much driving you can do fully electric and how much you can save by not filling up the car. And those are important things. It's something for Honda to look at. There's space to be able to put a button here. It's not that hard. But when it comes to the drive and ride of this car, it's really, really good. I mean, we did the Accord last year, so it's hard for me to really judge based on that. But I gotta say that because all the batteries essentially run along the bottom and a little bit into the trunk space, you have a very low center of gravity. Handling is exceptionally good. You've got heavy shocks on here because of the weight of the vehicle. So when you go over bumps and stuff, it's really smooth. In fact, I'm really impressed when you go over some of the potholes and the rougher roads like we are here. In some cars, you bounce around quite a bit, but in this, it really eats it up surprisingly well. And that's one of the things that people will notice when they get into the Clarity. Again, you're not taking a penalty for driving a plug-in hybrid. You're getting a great car. The ride is smooth, the handling is excellent, and you have the space to be able to fit your whole family. So I want to talk a little bit more about the car, not so much the ride and handling, because I'm telling you, it's really, really good. I want to talk about a little bit of the driving style when it comes to having this PHEV. Now, Honda says you can do 76 kilometers fully electric. On our test loop, I did 75.6 kilometers sequentially fully electric. So I got to believe what they say. You're going to do more electric range if you're in the city, if you have stop and go and you're using the regen braking. Unfortunately, the way that our test loop is set up, a very small portion of it is in city right away, and then we're on the highway. So you actually end up doing worse fuel economy on the highway, but still much better than what you get with even a hybrid vehicle in this size. By having the plug-in, even if you can't charge it all the time, you're still going to be getting much better fuel economy than you would normally. And we'll talk about all of those fuel numbers at the end. We like to be able to provide both the miles per gallon and liters per 100 kilometers, so we're going to save that until the end. But I'm telling you right now, based on the testing that we've already done, there hasn't been a hybrid vehicle or a regular petrol burning vehicle in this size segment that can do the same numbers as the Clarity. You have to go with a plug-in, and even if you can't plug it in all the time, you're still going to save a considerable amount, especially when you think about it. You're going to be driving this car maybe 25,000 kilometers a year. It adds up really, really quick. And one thing I actually really like, I found out we were playing with some of the buttons here. You've got the lane keep assist and forward collision warning stuff, but there's a button that has a little speaker on it, and it makes the little woola 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 sound when you're going. So let's see if we can hear it. A little bit. You can hear it a little bit. If you turn it off, it stops making it. It's there for pedestrians. If you have a visually impaired person who's walking along the street, they can't hear an electric car because it doesn't make as much sound. That's kind of federally mandated to have those on there. I like the fact that you can turn it off. If you're trying to sneak out at night for whatever reason, you don't want anybody to know that you're pulling out and you don't want them to hear woola 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 woola, then you can turn it off. It's the only PHEV or electric car I've driven so far that actually has an override button for it. I'm sure most people will keep it on, and in fact, you have to turn it on every time you turn on the car, so it's not like you turn it off and you forget about it.
We're going to be doing some quick maths on the 2019 Clarity PHEV in regards to our fuel economy numbers. First off, our initial 100-kilometer drive home from Montreal with an uncharged battery netted us 3.8 liters per 100 kilometers, or 62 US miles per gallon. We conducted our 100-kilometer test loop in econ mode on a dry, warm day and drove 75.6 kilometers fully electric before the gas motor kicked in, and we averaged it to 0.9 liters equivalent per 100 kilometers, or 261 US miles per gallon equivalent. We finished our 719-kilometer week with the Clarity by doing 1.5 liters equivalent per 100 kilometers, or 157 US mpge. Now, how does this stack up? That's where the math class comes into play. You're going to benefit the most from the Clarity if you drive within 76 kilometers of your home charger or a free-to-use charger. Here in Quebec, it costs around $1 per hour or $2.50 per session to use one of the 1,500 plus chargers in the province. Our own EV Duty Smart Home Charger costs quite a bit less, around $1.20 to charge fully in about 2.5 hours, which is why I say it's best to keep your commute within that 76 kilometer range. We ended up using $15 worth of gas during our week, $5.72 worth of public charging, and $3.84 at home. Now let's take the 2019 Kia Stinger GT line as a comparison, offering roughly the same interior, passenger, and cargo space with similar power at around 250 horsepower. We averaged 8.4 liters per 100 kilometers, meaning we'd have to use 60.4 liters to do the same 719 kilometers we did on the Clarity. Fuel costs were around $1.26 per liter during our week with the Clarity, meaning the Stinger would have cost us $76.10 in fuel compared to the $24.56 we spent with the Clarity. We'll have a better idea of how the Clarity PHEV compares with a typical hybrid vehicle in a few weeks with the non-plug-in Honda Insight, and we'll recompare our fuel numbers with that vehicle in that episode. But either way you slice it, if you're using the Clarity as an EV in town and charging it at home or free stations in your area, you'll notice a significant savings for monthly fuel costs. In fact, we'd have likely saved a considerable amount had the Clarity been fully charged when we initially picked it up. But let's go over our likes and dislikes, starting with the fuel economy at the top of our like list, followed by the full EV range as advertised, excellent ride and drive comfort, interior space, and spacious cargo capacity. And there's not much to dislike either about the Clarity, since it does a great job as a plug-in hybrid, but is also a really good car at the same time. The lack of a charging ETA on the cluster computer is a miss for us, along with the older infotainment software not providing a ton of PHEV data for us to use. The lack of power seats compared to the US model is also a letdown, as we found the seats were angled a bit too low at the front. But one thing that won't make our dislike list is the styling. I like it, and I'm probably the only one. I think the Clarity has a funky cross-tour inspired design to it that works for this vehicle, and as long as you can get over the split rear window, you're going to really come to love the looks of it too, especially when you're flying by gas stations every week as you cruise along with your 0.9 liters per 100 kilometers. But let us know what you think about the 2019 Clarity PHEV in the comments below. Start your own discussion by leaving a comment or join one that's ongoing by adding your thoughts into the mix.